Hello, I am Frolicker VGC. Welcome to the channel. I just got back from Toronto and I am so excited to have placed fifth at the Toronto Regionals. It was super fun getting to talk with and play against a whole bunch of top tier VGC players. I learned a lot about the game, had a lot of fun, and now I'm going to share with you everything there is to know about the team that I used in Toronto. We are talking EV spreads, we are talking IVs, rental codes. I'm not going to another major event for a little bit, so I've got nothing to hide right now. In particular, I think the Iron Hand set that I used is really, really strong into the current meta. Even if you're not wanting to use my team exactly, I think that you can take that Iron Hand set, I think you can paste it onto your own Tailwind team, and it was going to put in a lot of work. Anyway, let's get into it. So first things first, here is the rental code. This is the exact team, exact spreads that I used to get top five in Toronto. I'll leave this up on screen for a little bit. Just feel free to pause it, get that code typed in. Anyway, today what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the EVs and the different move sets, items, and decisions I made when building the team. The team has got 6 really solid meta-relevant mons, but 3 of those mons have pretty weird sets, and we're going to get into why exactly that is the case. Anyway, after we discuss the team, I'm going to review all of the matches that were played on stream. I had a couple of different sets, both in the final round of Swiss on day 2 and my top 8 match against Jamie Boyd. Both of them went to 3 games. Unfortunately, I did lose both. So if you want to lose your matches in exactly the same way, I will make sure that you understand exactly how that is done. There is a team report in the description that goes super, super in depth on all of these EV spreads, what they do, why they are the way they are, and everything that they accomplish. I encourage you to take a look at that. You might want to skim through it, just look at whatever mod you're interested in because it is pretty long. But I'm just going to briefly go over what all of the mons do here. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'm gonna be looking through them, answering anything that people are asking pretty much. And also, there's a good chance your question is going to be in that team report, so feel free to go ahead and take a look at it. Tornadus is what we're going to talk about first. Basically, this whole team revolves around Tornadus and Chin Pao. You are looking at a hyper offense team that deals a lot of physical damage. Tornadus with Sharpbeak does a ton of damage with Bleak Wind Storm. You can just spam that, and you are chipping down teams, doing huge damage to all of the grass types in the metagame, and there are a ton of those. Assault Vist Rillaboom gets 2-hit KO'd by this, which is fantastic. You have Tailwind to just enable your entire offense mode. You have Taunt and Max Speed in order to you have Taunt and Max Speed in order to punish slow Tornaduses, especially more defensive ones. They just are stuck on the field not doing anything. And it also gives you a shot against Amoonguss, which is really useful. Leer helps shore up a difficult Dondozo matchup just because you have a lot of physical attackers. And it also lets you pick up a lot of KOs that you normally only pick up alongside Shin Pao. And again, for those specific calcs, make sure to check out that team report. I talk about stuff like Terra Fairy, Terra Blast, and Iron Hands, how much damage that does. And I talk about basically I have a lot of different ways I'm thinking about just how to kill an opposing Iron Hands, and how to kill it from full. And that's all stuff that is in those team reports. Yeah, so make sure to check that out. A lot of bulk on this Torn. Basically, Sharpbeak lets you do a lot of damage while still not getting one-hit KO'd by a lot of things because it lets you invest some more in bulk. And yeah, it's a Tornadus that's done really, really well for me. I ran Life Orb back in Peoria. I think that's also very viable. Sharpbeak, I started running just because the Ogre Pawns were getting bulkier. They weren't going down in one hit. And so I thought that I would prioritize not taking that chip damage, over going for one-hit KOs that were not consistent because Ogre Pawns were too bulky. Arcanine Hisui. Pretty self-explanatory set. You hit hard, you deal a ton of damage, you spam Rock Slide. This just Choice Band Arcanine Hisui, it does a ton of damage. Rock and Fire are fantastic stabs. Terra Fairy Terra Blast is an extremely spammable move, and this thing loves to Terrasilize, just because Rock Fire is great offensively but really bad defensively. And when you've got Terra Fairy, Terra Blast, and Choice Band, a lot of teams don't expect you to be spamming that, and they just get undone by it. Super, super fantastic Mon. 180 speed lets you always outspeed Adamant Dragonite, which is super, super useful. Because you can lead Arcanine Hisui Tornadus into Dragonite Chien-Pao. You can usually Altera Ghost the Tornadus, just to live either an Ice move or a Extreme Speed that they want to throw that way. And then you Rock Slide Bleak Wind, and that should pick up both kills, especially if they are Inner Focus Dragonite, then that should definitely pick up both kills. And come extremely, extremely close if they are Terra Normal, or if they do choose to Terrestrialize Normal. Iron Hands, fantastic Mon. This is basically the glue that holds the team together. Clear Amulet lets you ignore Intimidates, which is fantastic because you got so many physical attackers. Terra Poison lets you live hits against even Choice Specs Flutter, and it also lets you beat an opposing Iron Hands in the endgame. Close Combat picks up a ton of kills with Sword of Ruin or with a Leer. It Oko's Ogre Pawn. It Oko's a Terra Dark King Gambit, easy. It's just, this thing is dealing just a ton of damage. 204 speed lets you outspeed Jolly Dondozo. It also lets you outspeed Ogre Pawn in Tailwind. It lets you outspeed Adamant or Modest Chien-Pao Flutter in Tailwind. They're not going to expect that, and this just punishes a whole lot of things. You also get faster Fake Out than any other Iron Hands you're going to see. This was a fantastic Mon. I think objectively, this is probably like a unique set that can work on a lot of teams that people just haven't quite found out about yet. So take a look at that. This is just really good. Urshifu Rapid, pretty standard stuff here. Adamant, 252 attack, just deal as much damage as possible, especially next to Chien-Pao. 212 speed in order to outspeed Adamant Scarf Lando T. And then, yeah, you're just dealing a lot of damage with Surging Strikes, Terra Water. Because you're Choice Scarf, you can punish Ogre Pawn Wellspring with U-turns. And Ogre's Pawn Wellspring actually really struggles into Urshifu Rapid if you are playing it correctly and not just spamming Surging Strikes while the opponent still does have Ogre Pawn Wellspring. Sinistcha is my hero. Sinistcha is fantastic. We're going to talk briefly about Chien-Pao first, then we're going to spend a little bit talking about Sinistcha because I love that Mon so much. Chien-Pao, Terra Ghost, pretty obvious reasons. Avoid Fake Out, avoid big fighting moves, keep your Focus Sash intact. Adamant Chien-Pao, just to pick up more KOs. Ice Spinner gets rid of terrain, which is really, really useful utility. Lash Out does huge amounts of damage if you've been intimidated, and people are always trying to intimidate Chien-Pao, and this is just really, really punishing to a ton of Mons. If they lead like Lando T and Flutter, and you lash out into the Flutter, then the Flutter's just dead, which is a lot of fun. Sinistcha. Basically, I had 5 Mons on this team, and I had been working with my good friend Charpie. We were building, he built most of this hyper offense team for Regulation D. We were adapting it for Regulation E, and it just was not working for me at all. It had a list of problems that seemed near unsolvable. And the problems were, it needed a special attacker that was a dedicated special attacker capable of dealing a lot of damage. It needed setup. It didn't have any setup Mons. It needed a way to punish protects and passive play. It needed redirection, especially with like the 2 choice users. They could get stuck on the field sometimes. It needed a more reliable answer into Iron Hand. It needed a Ghost type to just have a Mon that naturally ignored Fake Out and E-Speed. It needed a Grass type to complete the Fire Water Grass core. And what I did is I listed out all those things this team needed, and I realized there's only one Mon that can do all of those things, and that's Sinistcha. And that's how we got this really unique Sinistcha set. Most Sinistchas go like super, super defensive, and they're like Strength Sap, um, let me Matcha Gotcha occasionally. I'll Strength Sap, take a lot of health, and they'll just be an endgame, a sort of passive endgame win condition, and people have a lot of ways around it. And they're fine. This Sinistcha, you have Rage Powder, just for that regular sort of support. But then you have Nasty Plot and Shadow Ball and Matcha Gotcha. And basically, there's just so many things that Sinistcha walls it can set up in front of. And if the opponent has the wrong Mons in front of Sinistcha, it can set up a Nasty Plot or two, get quickly out of hand. And then once you've set up one, two, or even three nasty plots, then you start Machagachiing, and it's like they're dealing some damage, but you're getting all of that health back, and it's game over. A fantastic Pokemon. Flying Stab, especially Bleakwind Storm, was super, super difficult for it at first. And so Terra Steel ends up being a fantastic defensive Terra for it. And that's only enabled by the fact that it gets Heatproof. Most Sinistcha run Hospitality to like switch in and heal your Mon 25%, but look at the rest of this team. Like, you're running a really fast Iron Hands. You're running Arcanine Hisui that goes down to the slightest little bubble or slightest little bit of dirt. You're running a Tornadus with some bulk, but it's not really it's a support mon. It's not the thing you're trying to support. You've got a frail Urshifu and a frail Chanpao. These mons don't need hospitality. It doesn't help at all. And furthermore, Sinistcha likes to sit on the field, set up nasty plots, or sit in the field, redirect. You're not switching in and out with this Sinistcha a whole bunch. And so, like, originally I was running hospitality just because it's a great ability, but I was just getting so little mileage out of it. I switched to Heatproof, and then all of a sudden, they've got a Citrus Berry Arcanine, that thing's not two-hit KOing Sinistcha. And you can set up in front of Arcanine. If they've got a pretty passive Heatran with like Heat Wave, and leftovers, then Sinistcha can set up in front of it. Especially if it's able to Matcha Gotcha that Heatran's partner, then all of a sudden your opponent has a huge, huge issue. Yeah, this was a fantastic set, and basically in any matchup where I was confused, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what to bring, Sinistcha was almost always the answer. This is the final round of Swiss on day 2. Both Raghav and I are 11-2 at this point. I believe we both are guaranteed a place in top 8 just based on how well we've done so far in day 1 and day 2. I don't know it at the time, though. I don't know what my resistance is, so I think it is a pretty important game there. I do end up losing this, but still making top 8, which, fantastic. Anyway, this is Raghav's team. Basically, the key part of this matchup here is he ends up, for the 3 games, he brings Urshifu Rapid, he brings Rillaboom, he brings Arcanine, and those 3 mons cannot touch my Sinistcha. Or Arcanine can deal around half with Flare Blitz, but because of Citrus Berry, that's not actually, on my own Sinistcha, that's not actually a 2-hit KO. And so, what that means is the way for me to win the game is to set up nasty plots with Sinistcha when it's going up against mons that can't hit it, and Matcha Gotcha away and win the game that way. The first game, he ends up leading with Tornadus and Urshifu. That's my team there, but we've already talked about that. Trying to get to this start of the game. Yep, he ends up leading with Tornadus and Urshifu. I end up leading with Iron Hands and Arcanine. He switches out that Urshifu for his own Arcanine. I end up wild charging that Arcanine and switching into Sinistcha, because I just expect his Torn to be a little passive there. and turn 1 ends up going pretty well for me. But the thing is, I think just in this first turn here, even though all that went super, super well, I think I kind of show that I don't fully understand how much condition Sinistcha is. And granted, he could have something like Regidrago in the back, he could have Golden Go in the back, which would be a bit more difficult for my Sinistcha to deal with. But I end up risking my Sinistcha taking a big Bleak Wind there, and that would have caused huge issues. Kind of being the story of game 1. I end up leaving it on the field. I switch in my own Arcanine on a Will-O-Wisp here, which is a great read, but it's like you're winning the battle, you're losing the war. You're taking a lot of damage on Sinistcha here. It does get back to near full because I have Citrus Berry and I Matcha Gotcha, but that Citrus Berry being used up, that's permanent. And what that means is later in the game, I do switch in Sinistcha on a Bleak Wind when I expect Tornadus to protect or switch out. And then this this causes Sinistcha's health to become so low that it can no longer counter Urshifu, it can no longer counter Rillaboom, and it can no longer set up any nasty plots, and I end. So we're not going to watch the game in full, but I do want to show that play later on. It's like I am preserving Sinistcha, I do bring hands in, and then here, I think the Tornadus had just protected, so I figured it would. I figured it didn't want to take a Rock Slide. I didn't want to take a high horsepower. I was also wild charging the Torn, but it ends up Raghav ends up making just a great play. He Terra Ghosts. I take too much damage on Sinistcha, and basically I've lost the game on the spot, just because my other Mons, especially without Tailwind on my end, cannot deal with his. And so just because Sinistcha is that low, I end up just losing the game there. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about game 2. So for game 2, we've got different leads here. He ends up bringing Drago over Tornadus, which I think actually does end up helping me out a bit, just because I think I've got a few more ways to knock out Regidrago. And it also means that I can monopolize Tailwind. Granted, if he did lead Tornadus, I could have taunted it and hit the other slot pretty hard with Iron Hands. As it stands here, he's threatening a Fake Out and a big Dragon Energy, and since my Iron Hands is not Assault Vest, it's going to take a lot of damage from that. I end up, in case he does, like, Fake Out the Torn, I know I can get a lot of mileage out of the turn if he does make that misplay, and so I end up going for that Terra Ghost. He ends up making the smart play and hitting the hands there. I thankfully hit the Bleak Wind Storms, and I do take a lot of damage still. If I had missed Bleak Wind there, that would have been really, really bad. Especially on the Drago, honestly, more so than the Rillaboom, funnily enough. Wait, here it kind of looks like I'm in a tough spot, because he can grab that Tornadus and kill it, and Dragon Energy. But the thing is, at +1 priority, I have Prankster moves, and Tornadus is faster than his Rillaboom, so I can set up Tailwind here, which I will do in just a second. Don't know what I'm thinking about here. But I set up Tailwind. He knocks out the Tornadus. So I do have Ice Punch on hands. I don't know this exact calc though, so sometimes you just want to play it safe. Close combat, knocks out the Regidrago. Again, I've got a fast Iron Hand, so there's no world in which Regidrago outspeeds. And I just won the entire game. Because the thing is, he's got Rillaboom, he's got Arcanine, he has Urshifu left, and I have a Sinistcha at full health, very intact. I mean, I do have Tailwind up as well, which is helpful. But he's going to bring in Urshifu. I have Sinistcha right here. He's threatening no damage into Sinistcha. Sinistcha's got a good amount of physical bulk. He's just not able to hit it for a lot of damage at all. And I am just at this point looking to set up nasty plots. I have to decide. I've got Iron Hands and Arcanine in the back. I've already used my Terra. I have to decide basically which one of those I want to keep. I'm expecting a Surging Strikes into the Iron Hand slot. I understand that he might not do that because I am threatening Rage Powder. But I decide to sack Arcanine, saying it's fine if that goes down. I'd rather have the Fake Out just to guarantee another nasty plot setup, because I think Sinistcha, after 2 nasty plots, should just win this game. But he ends up being afraid of Rage Powder. He U-turns. I look like a genius. I think I had it in the bag anyway, just because Sinistcha was going to just be recovering so much health constantly. It had a lot of free turns to set up nasty plot. And like if you had Surging Strikes, then it's like you're even threatening Sinistcha less. But I nasty plot here. Since I am Heatproof, I end up actually nasty plotting again in front of this Arcanine. Arcanine switches out, which is fantastic for me. And yes, the game is just done from this point. Arcanine hands, they don't even matter. I suppose they might matter if I do start missing a whole bunch of Machagachas, but I'm just in a fantastic position here. And again, it all comes down to once Regidrago's gone, then all of a sudden Sinistcha is able to just defeat and everything. And it's able to one-shot the Arcanine with Shadow Ball in the endgame. I'm able to fake it out on that last turn, and Sinistcha ends up working out as a great endgame win in this matchup for Game 2. So now we're on to Game 3. I am aware at this point that Sinistcha is super, super important. I end up leading with Arcanine and Torn. This is an adaptation to the idea he could be leading Regidrago. I don't think I've used my Terra that great in the first 2 games. Just because Terra Ghost on Tornadus, you'd never super get a lot of mileage out of it. I know I don't want to terrestrialize the Sinistcha. Poison Terra Hands doesn't help a ton. And so I kind of have identified that I'm wanting to terrestrialize Arcanine anyway. They do fake out the Arcanine, but it's not going to get hit by Dragon Energy, which means that it's like I'm relying on Bleak Wind again for Tornadus to live, but it's not complete disaster. If it misses, like it would have been in Game 2, it would have been a disaster if Bleak Wind misses. And so I'm in a much better position here. He ends up making a really, really great play here. He switches Rillaboom out into Arcanine. I know that Regidrago is the big threat here. I know that it has Steel Terra. And so what I end up doing, hitting a Terra Blast into that slot, I end up going for a Flare Blitz and a Bleak Wind. This way, if Regidrago does Terrestrialize this turn or next, then I am punishing it. So here he made a good play on the second turn. I am still in an all right position. Not doing a ton to either Mon, but I mean it's still, along with Bleak Wind, could potentially KO that Regidrago. And that Regidrago can't really terrestrialize to get out of that. I could also Tailwind with Torn. Since he doesn't have Torn, that would be really useful as well. What I'm thinking though is I'm thinking that he may want to switch out the Drago to preserve it, or like launch an attack into the Tornadus with Drago, and he's going to want to burn the Arcanine. So what I do is I switch out that Arcanine into Sinistcha. I Bleak Wind, just in case he's wanting to spam Dragon Energy. And he Draco Meteors into the Fairy-type Arcanine to one-hit KO Sinistcha. Again, Sinistcha is the win condition of this game. It's the most important Mon. And the game is pretty much over on the spot right there. A fantastic play by Raghav. That was a wonderful, wonderful read. Full credit to him. But I think you also have to, I mean, from my perspective, looking back on it, it's like if he did Will-O-Wisp that Arcanine like I predicted, I don't, that's not a huge deal. Arcanine's not my win condition. That's sad, but it can still deal a decent amount of damage. It's still going to get a Flare Blitz off first into that Regidrago. Um, and it's like I would be okay, you know? But if he does make a predict like this, then I can potentially lose the game on the spot. So I think it's just a lesson to be learned from my perspective, which is just like guard your win conditions, don't risk them needlessly. Even if it's a low percentage play, it's just like I probably didn't need to bring in Sinistcha there. Bringing in Iron Hands might have even been better for me as well. It still would have been a difficult game if Iron Hands had got one shot there, because I think it would have, just because I guess best. Um, but with Sinistcha going down, that's pretty much the game, and Tornadus goes down here as well. Fantastic play by Rogov. If you and I think that like I'm even saying that in chat right there. It's like I'm telling him like, hey, like that was a wonderful play. It's really cool you got to make that play on stream. But yeah, like if you've got to lose a match on stream, lose it to an epic Draco Meteor call your own fairy type. That's really, really cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed talking with Raghav. He was super nice. It was awesome to get to play in this set. Raghav is a top player. Um, and I also think that this is a fun one to analyze just because there's a clear win condition on my end. In the first game, I was careless with it. In the second game, I used it really well. And in the third game, it's like I made, I think, a very logical play, but one with a potential very high cost, and I was punished, which I think is super interesting. Props to Raghav. He finished top four. Really, really strong showing from him at Toronto. So up next, we are gonna go ahead. We're gonna watch my top eight match against Jamie Boyce. I gotta talk to Jamie for a little bit beforehand. Super awesome human being. Um, yeah, I gotta talk to him just a little bit about life, about Pokemon, about how he casts games in Europe. He was a lot of fun to talk to. Um, this was a super fun set. I'm actually going to spend a little bit less time talking about this one just to keep the video a little bit shorter, just because there's so much I could say. What I am briefly going to say about game one is that I won game one. I think I did not handle the end game super well. I lucked out a little bit. I actually think I played a lot better game two, but Jamie's play was just really top tier game two. He was able to leverage his Ogerpon really well, and bring it in on an Intimidate. And then I didn't realize that, like, with at +2, that it could be KOing the likes of Arcanine. That's really cool. Yeah, he's got a super unique team. This was a super fun set. We're going to talk about just a play-by-play of game three, though. So this is for a place in top four. So we start off, he leads Roaring Moon Urshifu. I lead Hands Tornadus. I had led Arcanine previous games, so I think he led that Urshifu in order to catch it out. And I actually don't hate this lead. I don't have a defensive switch into Urshifu, but I'm threatening it with a lot of damage right now. I could fake out either Mon. He does have Protect on both Mons, but because I didn't fake out in a prior game and instead repositioned, I expect him to not go for Protect. So I decide to fake out the Roaring Moon and Bleak Wind Storm, because Bleak Wind Storm kills Urshifu if it doesn't Terra. It could Terra, and that would make this play suffer, then I would regret not Wild Charging, but he doesn't Terra here. And unfortunately, I do miss. So the thing is, with Sharpbeak, that is a guaranteed Oko on every single Urshifu water I've ever seen. So I'm pretty upset. at the time that that one missed. But Jamie Boyd, not only did he bring such a unique team of Mons, he brought some very unique sets as well. Here I Wild Charge. I figure I am going to go down before I get that Wild Charge off, but it's fine to go for it anyway. I decide to Bleak Wind, hopefully pick up both knockouts this turn, which is what I expect. He Tailwinds, I expect that. He's going to kill the Iron Hands here. And again, with Sharpbeak, just going in, it's like if an Urshifu has a little bit of bulk, then I'm still doing 105% minimum. And I do land the Bleak Windstorm here, fortunately. But it does not do nearly as much as I think it's going to do. I also used to run Life Orb on this Tornadus when I was in Peoria. And that would have got the kill on Roaring Moon, which might have been useful as well. Granted, he would have got the free switch into a big threat, and he would have had Tailwind up, so don't know if that would have made a huge difference in my favor. Here, I'm thinking about what to do. I think bringing in Arcanine could be good here. It was too quick for me to think about, but Urshifu might be slower, since it is so bulky, to where Arcanine might be able to outspeed it. I still don't know, though, if I had Tailwinded. But I would have been threatening an E-Speed anyway if I brought Arcanine in, and so he might react to that. Here, I decide to go for Sucker Punch to try and pick off that Urshifu. I am thinking about what to do, because I could, like, Tailwind and hit the Urshifu with something. In the end, I decide to Sucker Punch and Bleak Wind. Eventually, I decide, I promise. So here, I Sucker Punch, and it lives on like 1 HP. I'm sure there's a roll in there somewhere, but that's the thing though. It's just like if you run a really unique set that people aren't prepared for, then it's like you can pick up key survivals like that, and it can turn a game on its head. So I definitely got some rough luck with that first Bleakwind miss. But if you're gonna run an 80% accurate Bleakwind Storm, you cannot complain when you miss a match, or when you miss like that. I also expected it to one-hit kill, so I expected just like if I hit one of those first two, that Urshifu would go down. That was not the case though, and so I ended up getting pretty heavily punished. Crazy, crazy bulky Urshifu. Really, really fun set from Jamie Boyd. Really, really. I mean, like he had some creative mons. He also had Thunderous Therian that he didn't end up bringing here, which was super, super cool. But his EV spreads as well are what I think let him do so well in the tournament, which was fantastic. Here he, yeah, it's like I've got Arcanine in the back, and it's pretty much done from this point forward, just because his Ogerpon can't always outspeed my Arcanine. We saw last game that it's a one-hit KO. I'll still try to see if it's not, but because he does Terra Grass, he is able to pick up that KO. There we go. And Arcanine goes down. So a really, really fun set against Jamie Boyd. He played it super, super well. Honestly, I'm not too upset with how I played game um, game three here. I think I honestly probably played my worst. I'll just keep playing the video as I talk. I think I probably played my worst in game one, just in the end game. I don't think I managed it very well, but I still just got lucky. But Jamie just, I think, just outplayed me game two and three. Just by getting the Ogre Pawn in at good times, knowing that if he terastallized it and got the Defiant boost, then it's basically unstoppable for my team, just because its speed tier is especially difficult for me. And yeah, he just leveraged that Ogre Pawn really well, and I was prepared to face Defiant King Gambit. I just wasn't really prepared to face a Defiant Ogre Pawn. That's just not something that I faced a lot in prep. And so really, really fantastic choices from Jamie Boyd. In hindsight, I wish that I had been KOing his Roaring Moon earlier in matches, but honestly, in game 3, the only thing I might change is that, like, I might have, like, Wild Charge that Urshifu, but I think it still probably, lives that as well, just considering how bulky it was. I also could have brought in Arcanine instead of Chien-Pao. I could have Flare Blitzed that slot, Tailwinded. That would have been a pretty wild play. I don't know if it would have worked out well for me or not. He probably... I forget if he has Aqua Jet, in which case it wouldn't have. I'll have to go back and look at his set. But honestly, I think I played pretty well game 2 and game 3. I just went up against a top player with a super creative team that I wasn't comfortable facing. And yeah, and we got a really fun best of 3 set out of it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I have links in the description to the battles with the original commentary. I have a link to my team report, I have a link to the team's Pokepaste, and I have a link to Jamie Boyd's team report as well, which he posted not too long ago. Again, this has been Frolicker VGC, and I will see you next time.